Welcome to the bye week, Miami Dolphins fans. It's Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. Last video, I talked about having a little something to get you through this bye week. Scratch that Miami Dolphins itch. So that's what we are doing today with the rest of the season preview for your Miami Dolphins. I've got a lot to get to. I got a lot packed into this one, so we're going to jump right in. Before I do that, though, I want to hear from you. Your job for today. In the comments, go ahead, drop your win-loss predictions for the rest of the season. What's the final record going to be for our Miami Dolphins? Drop it in the comments. Want to see where you see the rest of this season going and how you think it's going to play out. So obviously, as you know, through 9 weeks, we are 6-3, which means we've got 8 games remaining. The best we can do, 14-3. Worst we can do is 6-11. We're not going to talk like that, though, today. Real quick, before we jump into the rest of the season preview, for comparison's sake, last year, the Buffalo Bills took the AFC East. It gave them 13 wins. Now, they didn't need that many to win the division because we actually were second place in the East with just 9 wins. So 13 wins got the Bills the 2 seed in the AFC playoff picture. The 9 wins, we got in that final 7th, final playoff spot, the wild card spot. We got in with 9 wins over the Pittsburgh Steelers because of our tiebreaker situation with them. So that's a little bit of a picture as to what we're going to need potentially in regards to number of wins for the season. Now, looking ahead at the rest of the season, I'm not going to do a full breakdown of each of these games. That's what the weekly preview videos are for. We'll go into much more depth each and every week on those. But I've got a couple of nuggets about each team, how it relates to the Dolphins the rest of the way. Because we've got the Raiders, we're at the Jets, at the Commanders, home against the Titans, Jets, Cowboys, at the Ravens, and then home against the Bills. Now, if you kind of followed along with the teams that I had mentioned right there, that narrative of not beating a winning team, a team above a 500 record, isn't likely going to go anywhere soon. You talked about the teams that were playing right away. Who did we mention? It's the Raiders, it's the Jets, it's the Commanders, it's the Titans, it's the Jets again. The second half of that season, what we had talked about there, the second half of the season is where the opponents start getting a little bit tougher because the Raiders, the Jets, the Commanders, and the Titans are all 500 or under. As of right now, their combined record is 15-19. So we're not putting that narrative to bed anytime soon. But we talked about the final 3 opponents. That's when things get a little bit trickier. Cowboys, Ravens, Bills, all over 500, combined record of 17-9. So let's start with who we jump back in with. That's week 11. We're back at home against the Raiders. The Raiders are currently 4-5, third place in the AFC West. Now, you probably know they recently went through some changes. Fired the head coach, fired the offensive coordinator, fired the general manager, benched Jimmy Garoppolo, turned the quarterback position over to a rookie, Aiden O'Connell. Now, funny enough, you make all those sweeping changes. First game since all those changes, they win 30-6 against the Giants. Now, I know the Giants are a bit of a mess as well, but a win regardless. And Aiden O'Connell goes a modest 16-25, 209 yards. But if I look at the Las Vegas Raiders, I look at us coming back from the bye week, this game falls into a must-win just because, like we've done so far, you got to beat the teams that are on your schedule that you're supposed to beat. You can't have these letdowns. We're getting healthier. We're just coming off the bye. We're playing a rookie quarterback that's going against a steadily improving Miami Dolphins defense. We're back at home, like I said, for this one. No reason for a letdown. Take care of business when we get back. Let's go to week 12. Short week at the New York Jets. First ever NFL Black Friday game. The Jets are 4-4, third place in the AFC East. We know their calling card. It's the defense. That's the huge reason why they're even in it, why they have the amount of wins that they do since losing Aaron Rodgers after 4 plays of the season. They ranked 9th defensively in total yards allowed, 3rd in passing yards allowed, but they're 30th in rushing yards allowed per game. So you know where we're going to need to get it done in this one. I got what I'm going to consider the craziest stat of the year as it pertains to the Jets. And if it's not the craziest, it's top 2 or 3 at the very least. Now, the Jets, their last 4 games, they have scored 3 offensive touchdowns. And that's not just the crazy part. Here comes the crazy part. Each of those 3 touchdowns over the last 4 games came on 1-play drives. So what is that telling us? No production, no points, not even sustained drive. Their offense is as inefficient as we've seen lately in today's modern age of the NFL. But if you look at it, it is a road game. It's on a short week. That's going to be tough, but you still got to find a way to overcome their tough defense because of how bad their damn offense is. So we got to get that Black Friday win. Let's go to week 13. We're at Washington against the Commanders. They're 4-5, third place in the NFC East. This will be our second consecutive road game before the stretch that we've got where 3 games in a row at home. But if you look at playing at Washington, the Commanders haven't taken advantage of the season of playing at home. They're just 1-3 so far. This is a game. It's week 13. It's a little bit later in the season. The weather might not be terrible, but keep in mind it could be a game where maybe it's a little colder, maybe it's a little windy. Maybe that plays a bit of a factor. But if there's one thing we saw about Washington recently, it's right before the deadline, they were sellers. They traded Montez Sweat to the Bears. They traded Chase Young to the 49ers. But just like we said earlier in the video, as the Raiders made their sweeping changes, they come back and won. They trade their 2 best edge rushers. Last week, they come back and win 20-17 over the New England Patriots. But once again, chalk this one up as a game the Miami Dolphins should win. But at the end of the day, you can't overlook a team like a Commanders because coming up the next week, we've got a primetime game. And you know the players want to show up on primetime, but you cannot overlook it. But let's talk about that primetime game. In Miami, Tennessee Titans currently 3-5, last place in the AFC South. Now, just this week, they decided to make changes as well. We're playing some teams that are going through some rocky situations right now. They're moving away from former Dolphins quarterback Ryan Tannehill, and they're going forward with Will Levis. Now, Levis did lead them to a victory in his debut, 28-23 over the Falcons, lost last week 20-16. I believe that was a Thursday night game to the Steelers. Now, if you look at what they do offensively, it's kind of their old guys. Like it's Derrick Henry, it's DeAndre Hopkins. Those guys are still getting it done. But outside of that, can you name someone that scares NFL defenses? No, not really. So you got to chalk this one once again as got to win it. Beat the teams that you're better in. Don't have these letdowns, especially on prime time when you're playing in front of a larger audience. Week 15, it's the Jets. This time it's at home. We don't have to go into too much depth here. Talked about their strengths on defenses, their ineptness, if that's a word, on offense. However, this time it is at home. It is on a short week, but regardless, it's at home. Inferior opponent. Get the damn win. Week 16, Cowboys. We talked about these home games coming up. Cowboys are 5-3, second place in the NFC East behind the Eagles. This game wraps up our Dolphins 3-game homestand. And quite honestly, a lot is made. You think about the Cowboys, it's kind of America's team, and it's Dak, and it's Pollard, and it's CeeDee Lamb. But I look at the Cowboys, and I think defense. And the stats have backed it up this year. They are 3rd in total defense and yards allowed, 6th in passing defense yards allowed per game, and 15th in rushing defense, rushing yards allowed per game on defense. This part right here is probably a little bit cliche, but I think it holds true. And it's the old adage that you got to be able to run the ball late in the season when you're maybe not playing at home and when the weather turns. You got to have something to fall back on. And a lot of times the successful teams find that in the running game. And now we've got back-to-back games where it's the Jets, it's the Cowboys. It's good defenses, but if you look at where maybe they're a little bit weaker statistically, it is against the run. Plus, when you look at the Cowboys, they've got a bit of a game wrecker, a game changer on the defensive side of the ball by the name of Micah Parsons. Yeah, 7.5 sacks this year, 10 tackles for a loss, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. That's pretty damn good. It goes without saying that going against the Cowboys is probably one of the hardest games that we have remaining. I'm not going to label this maybe a must-win per se, but we talked about that narrative earlier in the video. And this is quite honestly probably maybe one of the first chances that we're going to have to beat a team that's 500 or above since returning back from the bye. So if you want to just try to outright kill that narrative, this potentially is that first shot for the Dolphins to do that. 2 left, week 17. We're at the Baltimore Ravens. They are crushing it right now. They are 7-2. They're first place in the AFC North. It's our final regular season road game, but I said they were doing well lately. Currently on a 4-game win streak. Over that 4-game win streak on offense, they're averaging 33 points per game while allowing just 12. They're getting it done on both sides of the ball. And quite honestly, what they do offensively bleeds itself nicely against a team like the Dolphins for their sake. It's a mobile quarterback, which we've struggled with in the past in Lamar Jackson. And it's a good pass-catching tight end in Mark Andrews. And I know we just handled Travis Kelce pretty well, but that takes a lot of scheming. That takes a lot of game planning. And if you put that much into trying to stop one guy and a tight end in that, Lamar Jackson is a difference maker. Patrick Mahomes can get it done on the ground. Lamar Jackson can win the league MVP on the ground. So we're talking about completely different teams and philosophies in this game. If I'm ranking the final remaining games for the Miami Dolphins, I'd say this is probably the hardest game remaining on the schedule. But with that said, super important when it comes to potential seeding for the AFC playoff picture. Let's wrap things up with the Bills. Week 18, they're 5-4. It's second place behind us in the AFC East. Quite honestly, the Bills, I think they're a good team, but man, they are just, for my money, one of the more confusing teams in the NFL. I think they're good, but away from Buffalo, they're just 1-3 this year, just 1-3 on the road. They've lost 2 of their last 3 overall, but yet somehow they've still got the second best point differential in the entire NFL. It's the Baltimore Ravens, who we played the week before, and then the Buffalo Bills. We know the drill when it comes to the Bills. It's a little bit like what I said in pertaining to the Ravens. It's you got to contain Josh Allen. We talk about it every time we play the Bills. Stay in front of him. Don't let him beat you with his legs. Don't let him make plays outside of the pocket. We'll talk about all of that as we enter that game in week 10. But this game, obviously huge potential as well. The division, the AFC East could be on the line. A spot in the playoffs potentially just in general could be on the line. Seeding, home field advantage, all of that could be on the line. But why I think this is a perfect opportunity is because we get it at home. The schedule doesn't always break this way for the Dolphins. And this is one of those, if you look at the last 20 years, one of those rare occurrences, we're actually a good team. We can make some noise this year. If we want to make the playoffs and make noise in the playoffs, it could be very crucial to win this game. And why I think the schedule lends itself nicely for us this year, we get this game at home. No, it's not the September heat that we're going to completely melt them with, but I'll play this game December, January, whenever it is in Miami, 100 times out of 100 times, rather than going to Buffalo and playing the game there. Especially, we saw the Bills' record when they're playing away. So huge game, huge implications to end the season for the Dolphins and the Bills. That is what I got. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about when you have that many games, 9 games remaining. But like I said, drop your win-loss predictions for the rest of the season. In the playoffs, how do you see the season finishing out for the Miami Dolphins? Let's carry on the conversation there. Until next time, Miami Dolphins fans, fins up.